welcome everyone for a very, very exciting, important night. I'm really stoked to be here with my buddy Corey Cambridge. We're going to jump into the conversation shortly, but just real quick, I wanted to give a little introduction for those who aren't familiar. The Jersey City Tech Meetup is an organization that we host monthly events in the community of Jersey City and beyond, showcasing different topics in tech, everything from social media marketing to cannabis to blockchain and more. So that's kind of what we do in physical space, but since this pandemic started, we've been doing more virtual events. And tonight's topic is something that is really important and not necessarily tech related, but this is something that I think everyone needs to be talking about. So that's why I wanted to bring Corey here, because he posted on Facebook recently to say, hey, anyone who's interested in having a conversation, please feel free to reach out and let me know, and I'm happy to talk to you. And I really admired that willingness for him to talk about these topics of racism and how we are as a nation and how we can improve as a nation. So I thought that was awesome. I got on the phone with him. We had an incredible conversation. And I just thought, hey, why don't we do this in front of a lot more people? Because the things I learned, I felt everyone could benefit from as well. So Corey was great and said, hell yeah, let's do it. Yeah, so that's where we are right now. Before we jump into it, just one thing I want to note as far as how this is run. Everyone feel free to kind of mingle and type thoughts in the chat box on the right. Just feel like you kind of network throughout the event and share your thoughts. We're going to do some Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, hopefully you do, just drop them right in the Q&A box in the bottom, and we'll get to them towards the end or throughout the event, depending on how it goes. So without further ado, Corey, thank you so much for joining us. How's everything going, brother?
Yo, my man Ben, dude, how's everything, dog? I can't complain, bro. Life is good. How about yourself?
It's great. It's great. You know, the world's a little crazy right now, but we're doing everything we can to stay positive and keep things moving forward. So,
dude, absolutely. I totally share that sentiment. So, I got shout out to my people. I see my boy Ted, my homegirl Janine on here. So it's a pleasure to have y'all. Much love to you. Thank y'all for tuning in.
Hell yeah. So why don't you start by just giving us a little bit of background about yourself and kind of, what's going on in the life of Corey. I know you got a big move coming up too. So, give people a little context.
I'm in the last days of New York, man, which is sad. It's been almost a decade here. But yeah, me and my girl are moving out to Los Angeles. So I'm super excited about that. And I've been here for 10 years. I moved here to pursue a career in music as a rapper. But that ended up me turning into a podcaster, just because the music climate in New York City changed, and I had to kind of change with it. And I fell in love with podcasting too. So that's what I'm doing now, man. I have a podcast called OPP with Corey Cambridge, which stands for Other People's Podcasts. And then I have another show called Silent Giants. And OPP is about, I interview famous podcasters about their show, and Silent Giants, I interview creatives. And that's a little bit about me and what I'm doing. So
that's amazing. And for any of you who might have been there, Corey was actually a panelist on our Podprenuers panel back in May 2019 when we were still doing these things in person. So now is a good time. Back when we were actually able to see each other.
Back when people were hanging out together in person.
The good old days. Can you remember?
Dude, it's crazy. I see people on the street, like my best friend Josh is up the street, and we ran into each other, and it was like scary. That like,
what do we do?
Yeah, it's like, dude, like, do I hug you? Like, I can't believe that you're even still a real person. You've been digital for 4 months. But yeah, man, it's a crazy time.
Yeah, it really is. So, I mean, yeah, we'll just jump right into it. I mean, we're going to talk about race. That's what this is about. And, the last couple of weeks, the last couple of months, there's been a lot of uproar in America about what's been happening, starting with George Floyd, but obviously this goes long before George Floyd. This is kind of a breaking point for everyone that's really brought action from a lot of people who never really considered themselves anti-racist. They actually kind of sit on the sidelines. So I want to start off by saying, now that the protests are starting to die down, the headlines it's starting to be less in the headlines. How can people still stay active with this thing and actually continue making a difference, even if it's not just right in front of your face every day?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the first thing is, I think, acknowledgement that race it exists, right? It's literally like air. We don't think about air, but it's all around us. And race is literally is a factor in everything that we do in our life, whether it's in our healthcare system, whether it's in our food, whether it's in our jobs, the neighborhoods that we live in. Race plays a role in everything we do for people of color.
Right.
And so I think that's just the first thing to acknowledge, that this thing, even though it might not be in the news every day because of COVID, which rightfully so, still, this is something that's just a part of life. And it's not going to go away.
No.
So, I wish that, I don't know, it's been a very interesting time for me personally, just because, I grew up in the South. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. So if you've been watching the news, we're always in the news, Richmond, because of the monuments and Monument Avenue. And race and racism is something you just naturally grow up with. And it's so normal to you that you don't even think that it's weird.
Right.
And then there's so many different levels of racism. You have like the racism where it's in New York, where racism is kind of associated with money. So I would say New York is a green, it's a green town. But still, race plays a role in that. And then you kind of have back home down south where race is something that is cultural, right? Like the Civil War. And it's
right.
That's celebrated.
Can you talk about that green? Not to interrupt, but can you talk about that green a little bit, just for people to understand a little better? Like how is racism like in the financial world, like in the New York way that you put it? How is that actually relevant and prevalent?
Yeah, because again, New York likes to think of itself as a liberal town. But once again, if you get moved out of a neighborhood, it's because you were priced out of a neighborhood. Right. Not because we don't want Black people in that neighborhood. Right.
And just put a price tag on it and say they're good people.
Yeah. So like down south, it could be, hey, we don't want to live with Black people.
Right. It's more blatant.
It's more blatant versus like here in New York, the conversation would be, you were priced out. Like, the demand for the neighborhood grew and all of a sudden you can't afford it anymore. But we all know that also ties in to race as well. Right. But of course it's put on with the green mask. And so, yeah, I think that with folks who are tuning in today is just like the first step. I like to think of everything in terms of racism as being a disease, and it's like alcoholism. And when you go to AA, you sit down in that AA meeting, they tell you the first thing is to recognize, like, yes, I'm an alcoholic. And I think for white America, I think this, in order to heal, it is about acknowledging that, like, hey, I am a racist, right? And what that means is, whether the cop who had this knee on George Floyd's neck, he's the dealer, right? Like, he's the person dealing and issuing racism physically. Right. But even if you're not the person dealing it, if you're the person who's benefiting from racism, where that means like, hey, you're able to go get a loan, like you're than a Black person, or hey, you can go drive your Benz in an expensive neighborhood casually because you're a white person. You're still using the privilege of racism. And so once we realize that, like, hey, like every white American is racist, we can then heal, right? Right. And being a racist is just the fabric. It's not to demonize anybody. It's just the culture. And every Black person is a victim of trauma. And so when we see like, a high drug abuse or crime rates or, bad health, it's all a reflection of the trauma that we've experienced over the last 400 years. Right. And then a lot of white people just don't necessarily understand that because they've never experienced it. So they don't comprehend that a lot of the things they do might have racial tendencies of being racist, and they just don't even understand it. Like you said, going back to that thing, the first step is acceptance. So like, what are some of, I guess, just for people listening in and the people who are trying to learn from this, what are some of those behaviors that they could start to like recognize and think about that, hey, I should really be thinking about this and being more aware and actually inclusive? Yeah, a lot of people ask, and this is why I posted that question or that invitation on Facebook to like have a conversation with my friends about race, because I was noticing that a lot of white people were saying like, what do I do? Like, I want to be better. I want to change. I want to learn. And I think that rightfully so, like a lot of Black folks can just be frustrated and be like, look, go learn it by yourself. Like, right. They've been explaining their whole lives. Yeah. But I think that, having these type of conversations are good. And it's the little things that we can do in our life to combat racism, right? Like, it's funny. Like, I tell folks, like, white America can be so specific about their diet, right? They can say, I'm going vegan.
Yeah.
And they can walk into a grocery store and say, you know what? I'm not going to buy beef. I'm not going to buy pork. I'm not going to buy chicken. I'm not going to buy dairy. I'm a vegan. And in the whole grocery store, I mean, a whole Walmart superstore, they can go through and select the things that they value. And right. And so we have to make race and being an anti-racist something that we value as a people. Right. And so what I mean by that is when you go buy a house, you should ask or try to find a person of color to be your realtor. When you go buy a BMW, when you go to the dealership, you should look for a person of color, right? Because we all know that one thing that helps people of color achieve equality is economics. But again, if you walk into the grocery store, I'm not a vegan. I walk into the grocery store, I just go pick up whatever the fuck I want because I want it.
Exactly.
And I'm not a vegan, right? But if I was vegan, I'm consciously making decisions and choices, and I'm valuing different things. And so, like, I think for white Americans, one thing that we can do is change our value system. You know, like, really think about, like, where does this come from? When you go into a job and you go in for that interview, ask, like, you know, how many people of color work here? What is the demographics of the company? You know, those type of, when you go into that dealership, that BMW dealership, asking, is there a person of color working here? And identifying, like, why is this the case? You know, and, like, don't spend your money there because this company does not share your values. And so it's a value shift that we have to do. It's mental. That's why it doesn't matter what legislation gets passed. You know, there's been 1 million amendments to combat racism, you know, and try to give African Americans and people of color or marginalized people an equal shake. But unless you change the mentality, nothing's going to change, right? Because the legislation doesn't change the mentality of the people. That's what we're seeing today in America. And so that mentality shift goes back to a value shift. And we have to value people of color, value being an anti-racist, value equality. Because again, I tell folks who are business owners, if you don't have a diverse company, you don't have a good company.
Right, because like you said when we spoke, you know, even especially around New York, when it's like in Jersey City, some of the most diverse places in the world, if you have just all white employees, like, what are you doing? Are you even trying or thinking about this kind of stuff?
Yeah, and I think also too, it's just about asking yourself, where are my black friends? Right? Like, you should look in your life. Like, one thing that I try to do in my life is I like to look around at everybody in my life and keep a diverse circle around me. Just in my friend circle.
Yeah, just get different perspectives.
Different perspectives. And I think it's also too, once again, changing that value system. Like, no, I value having different types of people around me. I value having gay friends. I value having black friends. I value having friends who are immigrants. I value friends who work in tech. I value friends who work in McDonald's. I value, like, keeping a well-rounded circle around you is so important. And I think for a lot of white Americans, they don't have to live with that. They can just, because their life is so good, that there's no need to change anything.
They don't even think about it.
But if white Americans can be on the curve, man, it's just gonna make your life a lot easier in the next 5-10 years, because the world is changing. Like, when George Floyd died, the world changed that day.
It did.
You know, the rules changed that day. The expectations changed that day. And so, yeah, this is just getting hip to what's happening right now. Like, the world's changed, and you have to kind of change with it.
Exactly. Yeah. What worries me is that I feel like in the past we've seen things like this happen before. And people, you know, they go out there, they protest, they are loud with their voices, but then it just kind of settles down and people go on with their normal lives. So it's like, I want people, myself included, to think about ways just like throughout life, how you could constantly be having that voice of, you know, not just on the sidelines of racism, but blatantly anti-racist and actually supporting those friends. So, I mean, I think it's a great thing you said about having a diverse circle, and also, you know, employees and businesses you shop from. And I think a lot of it probably stems from, you know, kids, like, you know, the way they're raised from their parents. If they're raised with racial tendencies or racist tendencies, then that's going to be how they grow up, and that's what they know. So would you say, like, the starting point is parenting? Like, what would you say that parents should do to even ingrain that in their kids' brains?
Dude, that's a great question. The first thing I would do, honestly, is take down white Jesus in your house. like that's the first sign of white supremacy, because Jesus, obviously, he's fucking Jesus. And yeah, he's fucking Jesus, and he is seen as the ethical, moral compass.
Right.
He is the pinnacle of human being. And when you portray him in a caricature, Jesus wasn't white. And so we're teaching our kids, we're teaching American society from birth, from our essential core of upbringing. We're uplifting this white Jesus character that did not exist.
Yeah, like praise white Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus was brown.
And then that's their idea of perfect, you know? So that's automatically just setting the pace for their life. Yes,
like Jesus was brown, man. Like, and I think like it would really humble a lot of white America that, wow, like it would humble white America to praise a brown person.
Yeah.
Like, yes. You know what I mean? And I think that's one thing that we see. You know, I see it in my corporate job. I see it in the president of the United States that we have today, is humility. And I think that we all have to, it would really humble white America to just, off the bat, when you raise your kids, don't raise them with a white Jesus. Like, tell your kids who Jesus really was. He was brown.
Right.
He was brown, dog. But another thing, too, is just like, again, going back to the value system, like really being conscious as parents about who some of my best friends growing up were friends that my mom put in my life, right? My mom kind of orchestrated my friend circle early on, which looking back now as a 32-year-old man, she instilled the values in me that she wanted me to have with the friends that I keep. And to this day, my friends are a reflection pretty much of who my mom picked. And so like, look at your kids' friend circles and say, yeah, like they need black friends, right? Like they need, you know, Asian friends. They need gay friends. This is only going to make them a better person. Like, let's shift that value system. And just anything anti-racist. Like, you know, I grew up in Virginia, where the Washington R words was my favorite football team. And I stopped rocking that shit, man. It's like, no,
I'm done with that. It's not cool. It's not worth it.
Because you know what? When you go out and you go, once again, for a lot of folks in America, race is something that they don't understand because they don't have to understand it to succeed. But everybody understands green. Everybody understands money. And so don't put your money, I refuse to put my money into a sports organization, or when I have children, dress them up in that gear in Washington R words clothing, because I don't support that.
Right.
You know, so don't say I'm not a racist, but you're giving money to a racist organization.
Exactly. So it all ties back, like you're saying, your values have to tie back into your day-to-day life. You can't just say I'm not a racist, but then kind of go about your day not really thinking about these things. It's about being conscious about what you're supporting, where you're shopping, what you're selecting. I like what you said about, you know, if you're going to get a BMW, get it from a black car salesman, because then you can feel good about your new car cruising home, and you can feel good knowing you helped just contribute to, you know, actually thinking about being diverse in your life.
Yes, like 100%, bro. I mean, man, I think too, it's also recognizing, in order to, I think, also combat racism, you really have to have respect and appreciation for black people.
Right.
Really, like when you look at someone that you're in a relationship with or you're married to, one thing that keeps your relationship strong is respect, right? Like when you respect that person you with, you treat them differently than if you just like think they're hot.
You just kind of like them a little bit.
Right. And I think with black people in America, we're kind of caught in this phase of like, oh, black people are cool. Or like, oh man, like I like their music, or I like how they dress. And I think we really have to get white America to understand and really appreciate the journey of a black person. When you see at your job, the white person here in that role and the black person here in that role, that black person had to do 10 times more to get to where that white person is.
That's crazy.
And came from a harder situation. Came from, you know, when you walk down the street, you're black. I mean, that alone, like the trauma of what being black is in America, truly the trauma. And so, you know, when you look at Jay-Z, you're not looking at just a rapper. This dude's a superhero. This dude has defeated the odds of all odds. Like, you come from the projects. You know what I mean? You come from the projects to emerge to become a billionaire. Like the odds, the tenacity, the adversity, to get to that point. You know, being black requires skill, right? Like, it's one thing when you go into a room and you're white and the other person you're sitting with is white and you're doing a business deal. But when you're black, you have to come with a different approach. It takes touch.
I never even thought about that.
Right?
Like, how would you approach something like that? Like, what kind of steps did you take? Like, that's something I would never think about. So I want to understand, like, what you go through in those scenarios.
Dude, when you go down and you sit down with every person needs to see a little bit of themselves in you in order to make a connection happen. So, like, hey, I tell friends all the time, you come to New York City, you want to make a friend? Where are you from? You from Detroit? There's a Detroit Lions bar. Go to the Detroit Lions bar because you're going to make friends naturally because you have something, you have a commonality, a tie that brings you together. And that's the difference in those business dealings. That's the difference in that job interview, right? Is that the white person might have that natural commonality because they're white, but the black person from Bed-Stuy might not have that commonality.
You got to dig deeper to think about what you could bring to as a commonality.
That black person has to create the commonality, right? Like, he has to bring something out in that person. And that's just an extra skill set that white America doesn't need. And so anytime you operate in the world as a black person, you are operating with touch and with care. And we can see that with our president. Look at how a black president has to act, and look at how a white president can act.
Yeah, it's fucking insane.
I mean, even though I do think the large majority of people, not the large majority, but the majority of people can recognize, like, what the fuck? Yeah. At the same time, like, to be able to operate in this way in society, something that a black person can never do. And I think to go on back to the point of understanding a person's journey and respecting a black person's journey is, this is the fight. When you see black people rioting and black people upset, this is why. I tell this story quite often. Imagine a white guy named Timmy. And Timmy, for his whole life, was getting $1 million a month in a bank account since the day he was born. $1 million, $12 million a year Timmy's getting. Now Timmy's 40. And Timmy's my boy. Like, I grew up with Timmy. Timmy is my dude. At 40 years old, I go to Timmy and say, yo, dog, man, you've been getting this like $1 million a month. Shit, your whole life, bro. Like, how about you give me half of that? Like, you been getting it.
You're good.
Timmy's going to say, nah, dude, get your own money. Like, this is mine. Go get yours. Now, imagine if Timmy was getting this money and it was invisible. Imagine if it was invisible money. And now Timmy's 40. And I go, Timmy, bruh, look how you live and look at how I'm living. Let me get half of that. I want half of the $1 million you're getting a month. He's like, dude, I'm not getting $1 million a month. I work hard for mine. And I'm like, Timmy, well, I work as hard as you do, bro, but I live over here and you live over there and you got a mansion. Like, and I don't have a mansion.
Yeah.
So why is that? That is privilege. And so the fact that as black people, we have to prove to white people that you're getting this privilege. We have to prove it. Now, let's say Timmy is self-aware. Right? Like Timmy just might be self-aware enough to understand oh, wow, Corey, that's my boy. He does live differently than I do. Why do I live over here and he lives over there? Maybe he's onto something. So then we have to not only make Timmy acknowledge that he's privileged, we have to pray that he's self-aware enough to know that, oh, this is a real thing.
Right.
The next step is make Timmy share it.
Exactly.
Is Timmy going to be willing to share it? And so that's the fight. When we see people rioting, when we see people upset, that's why. It's because we have 3 steps. We got to first approach you and let you know this is happening. We got to pray that you're aware enough to know it and to see it and acknowledge it. And then pray on another level that you want to share it.
Right. And that's a great point. I mean, I personally talk to people who like don't think white privilege is a thing. And I'm like, well, no, it is. Like, this is something that's very obvious, but people don't even see that. Like, how can you make people see, like, my point is that some people are just so stubborn and kind of like, just like, no, everyone's equal, like all lives matter, that kind of stuff. And that's the people that are really difficult to get through to. How can you make them see something that to someone like me feels so obvious?
Right. And I mean, that's another thing too about anti-racism. Call your white friends racist, man. Like, just because you're not putting a noose on a black man hanging from a tree, or you're not calling them the N-word, that doesn't mean that you're not doing racist things.
Right.
Right? Like, when you see people out here, if you're supporting Donald Trump, you are a racist. Like, there's no clear-cut way to frame it, right?
I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, it's like you are racist. And I think it's letting people know that, dog, you're a racist. And white people calling their family members racist, calling their friends racist, like disassociating yourself with that, because that's the only way that they're going to learn, is when people that they love and care about go, dog, I can't fuck with you because you're racist. And I don't put my money there.
Exactly.
I don't put my emotional money there.
Your energy, your time.
Yeah, because you know what that means? When you have a child, right? When I have a kid and I got a friend who's racist and I support them as my friend, I'm letting my little kid know that I support them.
Yeah. And that's where it starts at a young age. They'll see that and they're like, okay, I guess this is cool. It doesn't matter. Then people like say, oh, you can have friends with difference of opinions. But I say you can have different opinions. Like, you can like that band, I like this band, but like different deep values like that, that's something that I couldn't tolerate.
Yeah. And I think too, another thing that I wanted to touch on for folks who are listening, who are in positions of power at their companies or their own companies, like, let's redefine what job experience is, because so many times you get blacked out of opportunities because they say, oh, you don't have the right experience. And what experience means is you don't have white experience, right? You don't have an Ivy League degree. You don't live in the right neighborhood, or you don't have this quote unquote experience. And I think the one thing we have to recognize is, like, being black is an experience. Like, right,
you have thick skin from everything you faced.
Yeah, like, let's value that experience, right? Like, let's value that. Let's value people who are gay, because your experience as being gay is valuable here at the company. Let's redefine the word experience when it comes down to hiring practices. And because at the end of the day, the perspective that you bring to the company is just going to make me more money, right?
Exactly.
Like ultimately, it's just going to make us a better company. So that's what I really want to touch on, is redefining what experience is.
I love that. And I want to, and on a similar note, well, first and foremost, I just want to say real quick, I love the chat going on the side. So make sure you keep that up. And if you have questions, drop them in the Q&A, because we'll get that towards the end of this. But so thank you everyone who's here and participating. So on that same kind of note, what about people who like aren't in leadership positions? What if you're like a lower level person in a company and you want to see that change though? Maybe you're seeing that those the expectations are too high, like Ivy League, like you said, and there's no diversity in the workplace. What can you do as someone who's not necessarily at a leader level?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I always tell folks, like, Obviously I don't fuck with Donald Trump, but I will say this. People hate on him because he came from money. Now, I don't hate on anybody because they came from money. I hate when you don't use your privilege.
Right.
Right? Like when you come from money and you broke, I can't fucks with that.
Yeah.
Nah.
Exactly.
Nah, son, you're wasting your privilege, right? Or like if you come from a two-parent home and both of your parents were high school graduates and they put you in a better school system, they put you around better people who value academics, and you don't go to college or finish college, I can't respect that, B. Like, you're wasting your privilege. Your parents put you in a better position and you're not utilizing it. And that's my response to the answer. That's my answer to your question as well. Is like when you're at a company and you're privileged enough to be there, it's what you do when you get in there. So if you're like, hey, supervisor, why don't we have Black people? Why don't we have? Let's ask the question. Is there a reason why we don't have Black people in upper management or Black C-suite executives?
Right.
Like, use that privilege, exercise it, like be the beacon, start the conversation. Because again, so many times people don't have to think about it, but maybe you just asking that question, you being persistent, you having that, letting your employers know in that job interview, one thing I value is diversity.
That's a great point.
Because you know what? I used to work an office manager at a restaurant. Office manager at an office space. We would make vegan options for people.
Yeah, exactly. They shipped for the people who are vegan. Why not for race?
Yes. So when you go in to that job, just say one thing that I value is diversity and inclusion for all people.
That's powerful.
And so exercise that privilege. Don't sit on it. There was I was talking to a friend of mine. This was years ago in New York, and she's a model. And there was a picture of another model, and I was like, "Yeah, she's pretty." And she was like, "Oh, she's sitting on her pretty." Like sitting on her pretty. She was like, "Yeah, like because she's pretty, she's not doing the best she can do in these photos. She's just sitting on it." And I'm like, "Yo, that's the same thing goes with privilege. Like if you white, you got the shit, use the shit." Right.
Yeah. Because people are just like enjoy their privilege and just like all for themselves. Like Timmy, you're like, yo, you have power from that privilege. So leverage.
Right. And it doesn't have to be money. I'm not asking you to give a Black person $100 or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just saying that, yo, like use your mouth.
Yeah. Talk to your family, talk to your friends, call people out who are being racist, Yeah.
That to me is a crucial point.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's super insightful and actually really powerful to think about the kind of difference we can make, even if we're not in a leadership position. So thanks for that.
But so standing up, man, let me tell you something. No one likes to be ashamed. Like shame is a classic way of changing behavior. Right? Like just asking like, I had a moment at one of my jobs where there was a kind of a racist thing in a presentation. I was like, why is that? Why'd you use that?
You're like, what the fuck?
You know what I'm saying? But just asking that question and shaming them changed the behavior.
Then they like turn red. They're like, oh shit, I didn't even know. You're like, that's right. Well, now you know.
now you know. So use shame. Shame works, man.
Absolutely. Well, cool. Another kind of transition here is, from the last couple of weeks, you've seen people who haven't necessarily been part of, the Black Lives Matter movement in the past, but now they're starting to, come to terms with it and actually trying to support. And, you see some people who are doing things that they think are helpful, like white people doing things they think are helpful. And then you see that Black people are saying, hey, no, that's actually offensive. Don't do that shit. Like, I guess the question is, what should or what can they be doing to support the movement that's not actually harming it?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's multiple ways to protest. Like, I haven't gone out in the street to protest.
Right.
What I think that for white people, once again, it's just exercising, is speaking it, using your privilege to help other people.
Right.
To bring more awareness. If you're in a position of power, using it to hire people of color, just sharing the value system. If you don't know something, or if you want to find a way to support. Another thing is like, and we touched on this earlier, but I'm not a donations person. Like, I think one thing about like white America is that we teach white America to dump money at something.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you ever notice how rich people act, rich people don't do their lawn. They don't mow their lawn. They pay people to do it.
Yeah.
To get rid of the problem. And I think race gets treated the same way of like, oh, I donated to the NAACP. And it's like,
they're like, all right, did my part.
I think donating is cool to those causes, but again, it's that dirty work, right? It's that getting in the street, making friends of color, listening, knowing that this person's struggle, there's no feedback to it. This person's not wrong.
Right.
Right? Like, this is like the one time in a white person's life where you probably don't have much to add to the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. People like me, I felt useless. I'm like, what the fuck am I going to say,
Yeah, but you know what? Listening, like listening to someone really means a lot and really, really goes a long way. And when you listen, you'll be surprised, like, how many things go in movement.
Right, exactly. You got to understand before you can take action, I think.
Yeah, like, absolutely. So listening, I mean, truly listening to when the Me Too movement was in its peak, we listened to those women. We listened. And because we listened, we made those changes and will continue to make changes to make society a safer place for women to be. And I think for the Black community, like, for so long, we haven't had a moment for people to listen. Every Black person, man, I've been arrested twice. Never done anything illegal in my life. Why have I been arrested twice?
Yeah,
why have I been sent to jail? I've never done anything illegal in my life. Like, why me? Why have I been sent to jail?
That's insane.
Like, and again, when you sit down with your Black friends, you ask them, like, has this ever happened to you? Have you ever had bad experiences with the police? Another thing I want to say too is that I know what home is. I think every person who's in this Zoom meeting today has a home. And I know what home feels like. When you at home, you can walk around butt-ass naked.
Exactly.
When you at home, you can not make your bed. When you at home, man, you can have sex wherever you want.
It's a good one.
Because you at home. But let me tell you something. In America, Black people are not at home. You have to make your bed up in America when you're Black.
That's fucked up. You
can't walk around naked when you're Black in America. To this day, I don't go to the bodega. I don't go anywhere without a state-issued ID, because at any point, something could pop off and it's a Black man. And I'm in Williamsburg right now. If you look at the demographics of Williamsburg, it's 0.8% Black live in this neighborhood. When something pops off, they don't believe I live here. So I have to, at any point, have an issued ID just to prove who I am. It's no different than when the slaves were free. And when you were a free slave, you had to walk around with your papers.
Yeah.
Because they can send you back.
It's still happening in 2020.
It's still happening today. You're not going to get the benefit of the doubt. When you are in America, you're not at home as a Black person. Your bed has to be made. You can't have sex wherever you want. You can't walk around naked, because the white man can come visit you at any time, and you have to be ready.
That's crazy.
And that literally is what it's like in America, my friend. Like, you're not at home. You are always a visitor. The rules were never meant for you. Like, you're not going to get, you know what it's like when you go over to your cousin's house. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't get the master bed.
No.
They put you in the
You're like a guest, and that's fucked up because it's supposed to be the land of the free.
Yes. You go to your cousin's house, they put you in a sleeping bag, son. And they expect you to be happy because you're a guest. And that's what it's like being black in America. They expect you to be happy with, you're not a slave anymore. Be happy. And so, yeah.
So, I mean, all right, so that leads me to another question. And you might actually not have the answer for this. I mean, I'm just asking everything, but like on the police force and like the government, I know we talked about like what we can do as individuals to like, you know, have those conversations, you know, donate money, talk to people and actually buy stuff from black owned businesses. But what do you think the solutions are for the systemic racism in the police force and in politics? Like, you know, we were talking about Trump a little bit earlier. What do we do to work on chipping away at those issues?
Well, one, going back to the key word of this whole conversation is values. And so I think that one, we got to value black life, right? And understand that 13% of the population makes up 70% of the prison system. Why is that? That's absolutely absurd. We have to stop looking at black people as monsters, as people who can commit crimes. Let me tell you something. No one's committed more crime. And I love all people, but this is just the truth. No one's committed more crime and injustice than the white man.
Oh, I can attest to that.
Let me tell you.
Look how we got America, bro.
The person you're sleeping next to probably at night, maybe the person you should be scared of the most. Because black people don't have anything, right? Like, we don't have anything. We don't have anything, you know? Like, think about this culturally. Like, think about culturally. We didn't invite ourselves here to America. Like, we didn't kill off an entire race of people and take their land and rape their women, right? Like, this is a culture that's been happening in America for 400 years. And so look at black culture, man. Most time whenever you see black people, we're trying to have a good time. We always partying. We always dancing, you know? And the only reason why we're committing these crimes is because then we're put in desperate situations. You know, we're living in urban areas where like space is tight, right? I mean, imagine if you had a family of 7 people living in a 2-bedroom home. Everyone's fighting with each other because there's no space, you know? And that's what we're doing. And we're frustrated. And so, unfortunately, you know, another thing to think about too, you never see black people going into a white person's neighborhood and fucking shit up. For all the wrong that white people have done to black people, to Native American people, to Asian people, to gay people, all types of people, you never see black people just run up and burn on a white church or just killing white people for no reason. We're happy people. And so to answer the police question, I think it's one like just changing the values of the police. The police are here to protect and they're here to serve.
Right.
And the mission of the police has been to protect, to keep black people away from white people or to flex their power over black people. And that's not the objective. That's not the point. You know, the brother who was shot, I can't think of his name right now, in Atlanta recently. You know, the brother said, I live right over here. The cops, he wasn't being violent. The cops had just said, let's take you home. Because
that's protecting and serving. The serving, bringing you home is right there. That's a simple solution. De-escalate.
Your job is to de-escalate. Take that man and send him home to his family. Right? He's park his car or shit, give him a citation.
Yeah.
And give him a citation and send him home. You know, but this whole like putting people in jail foolishness is ridiculous. Like, and also white people, if you're listening, don't call the police. When you call the police on a black person, you are putting their life in danger.
It's like that lady in the Central Park.
Exactly. Amy Cooper.
Yeah.
And she knew what she was doing. She knew that she was putting.
She acted all panicked. There's nothing happening.
Listen, when you call George Floyd, when you call the police because somebody had a alleged fake $20 bill. I mean, you're calling the police over a phony Tony? Like that man died over that.
Straight up.
He died over that. Like, you called the police because of a fake $20 bill. I promise you, this dude, because if this was the case, they would announce it. It'd be all over the news. He was not some counterfeit kingpin. He wasn't printing fake money at the crib. Like, that wasn't happening.
Right.
He got a fake 20, like any person get a fake 20 and used it. Because
all you need to do is say, I don't accept this. You don't need to call the cops for something like that.
Yes. For white people, the police are your friends. For black people, they're not your friends. And so when you call the police on a black person, you are putting their life at risk. So do it sparingly.
That's a really good point. I think people need to understand more. And that's something I never think about. Not that I'm jumping around calling the police. I've barely called the police in my entire life. But I think more people need to think like that. Like, this is a life or death situation I'm putting them in for a very petty thing that doesn't need to happen.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, thank you for sharing. That's extremely insightful. I want to know, there's a lot of people, I guess, in not just Jersey City, but all part of that community that might be considered like influencers, or people who have like a bigger reach and they have their own communities. What would you say people like that, like especially white people who might be considered an influencer? What could they be doing to help this cause? I know we talked a lot about just like listening and once you understand using your voice, but these people who have these platforms, I feel like they kind of have a responsibility to make something happen. So what would you say from that perspective?
Another thing, keyword is, what do you value? So if you're an influencer, like I'm in the podcasting industry. I tell my podcasting friends, hey, you have a top podcast? If you have 4 podcasts that come out a month, one of them should be with a person of color as a guest. Like, what stories are we telling? Who are you interviewing? Don't just interview somebody because like, oh, their numbers don't match. No. What's your values? And so again, establishing a practice, establishing like, no, this is an important value to me. Like, I'm going to use my platform for good, right? I'm going to highlight a person of color. I want to collaborate with people of color. That is just so important, like really looking at the content that you're making and saying, damn, this shit is like hella white. I'm not valuing black voices the way that I need to.
And you might even think you're putting some really valuable shit out there. Maybe there are good insights, but if you're just making it all one-dimensional, then you're not seeing the whole picture of what's out there in the world.
Yeah, and all it takes is once again, if you're putting out 4 podcast episodes a month, putting out one,
if you don't know one black person to hit up, then that's a huge problem.
Yeah, Google, son.
Black people near me.
Yeah, black people near me. Like, shit, someone was like, yo, like, talking about the hiring process. How do I hire black people? I was like, dog, we live in New York. That's like saying, how do I get a slice of pizza? Like, just walk outside.
Yeah, and these people are like business owners. Like, if you solve business problems all day, if you're thinking, how do I find a black person? You really need to think a little deeper and think outside the box a little.
Dog, that happens. It's happened to me since all this has happened. People asking me, like, how do you find black people? And I'm like, dog, walk outside, close your eyes. They'll find you. You'll find them.
That's so fucking true. And we have the internet. What is everyone talking about?
The internet. Go on LinkedIn.
Go on LinkedIn.
I mean, they out there.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's really not difficult. So I think that's a great thing for people to consider, especially, tech companies out there. I mean, like, talking about these businesses and companies, are there any, I don't know if you have an answer to this, but are there any you see out there, like in Silicon Valley, New York, anywhere, that you consider like a shining example of diversity that like people should look to as like that they're doing it right?
Honestly, dude, no.
Holy shit, that's not an answer I expected.
Every industry, every aspect of my life as a black man is fucked up. Every element of my life, the healthcare system in America, fucked up. We've seen this with COVID.
Right.
COVID is just highlighting that, wow, the healthy white people are living and the poor black people who are unhealthy are dying. So when it comes down to every company, nah, because, you know, we don't have enough. Is the CEO black? You know, is the COO black? Is the founder black? I mean, like, nah, so every company's flawed.
Did you hear about, I mean, was it Reddit where the one, I don't know if it was the CEO, but a board member stepped down and they called for, they said, I want my replacement to be a black man. And then, I don't know enough about this to actually, you know, like talk about, like.
I think I did hear about this.
You hear about that? Like, do you think that's like a good example of what people should do?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, once again, value. Like, he's saying, this is what I value. Don't hire another white person, hire a black person.
That's good. I was happy to see that. I was like, I want more of that, you know, and I'm reading shit from TechCrunch and all like the tech news going on. I'm like, I want to see more kind of stuff like that where it's really just feeling like everyone's part of the conversation.
Yeah, dude. Like, once again, if you don't say anything, you're participating in it. If you are exiting a position of power and you don't say, hey, you know, I want a person of color here, then what are you doing? You know, you are being racist. You're perpetuating the system.
Right.
You know, like, yeah, it's important to exercise that privilege, like 100%.
So yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, and just as far as like people trying to learn and continue growing, because I mean, that's the starting point is people just getting better understanding and continuing to learn. Do you have any like, I guess, resources or places people could go? I mean, obviously there's books on history. I'd say probably history is a good place to start, but like, what resources would you give for people who are trying to just continue their learning and understanding?
There's a podcast called 1619 by the New York Times. Amazing podcast. I think it's just good for people to listen to understand kind of the way that I'm speaking about. It describes perfectly how racism takes place throughout every aspect of Black life. Whether it's the healthcare system, whether it's music, right? Like, it's an amazing podcast. It just breaks down how racism and how slavery is still being felt today by Black people. And again, I think the only way that we can make change again is that we have to see a little bit of ourselves in other people. We have to see a little bit of ourselves.
Human connection.
You know, yes, that's why these police officers are killing Black men. Because they don't see these Black men as fathers. They don't see them as sons.
They see them as thugs, you know, like
thugs. They don't see them as that someone's son. You know, they don't see them like every time I see I hear about a brother in jail, you can't, you know what, like the system not being suited to rehabilitate you. Like what good does it do to take away a person's voting rights?
Yeah. It makes it difficult for them to vote.
And to all the white folks who are listening to this today, the system that white people have created is not good. It's actually evil. It's actually designed literally to keep us down. It's designed that way. Like, why is it I could bank online, but I can't vote online?
Yeah.
But why is that? Why have they always made voting difficult?
Why are they making a whole stink right now about mail-in ballots and things like that? Why are they making it?
It's designed to not, because the power is keeping you away. The power is to keep you away from the power. That's the design. Like, we should be able to just go in our phone voting day and vote. Put in your social security number. Keep it moving.
It's 2020. How are we not voting from an app at this point?
Yeah, like I think that I hope that white folks can realize that I mean this with love, but the system that you guys, and I say you guys because it's your community, it's your country,
right?
That I'm living in. I'm living in your home, and the system that you've designed is designed to not have me and my people win.
That is fucked up in so many ways. And I appreciate you like sharing that perspective, because I don't think anyone really thinks like that. And people need to start understanding that more so we can make those changes. So when you see that the system's designed in a way to keep certain types of people down, that's not a winning system.
Yeah.
And we need the change.
We need the change.
All right. So this has been, I want to thank you again just for this conversation. This has been very, very, very insightful. And I appreciate you coming out here and taking your time to share. I have another question or two, but we have a couple Q&As we'll jump into. So just anyone, if you have any questions, throw them in now and we'll get to them shortly. Yeah, so I guess any just final words or like ideas you want to share from your perspective, or, let people know kind of where to find you?
Oh, look in here. Janine has a question. What would you like to teach my kids from your perspective as a Black person? Yo, that's a great question, Janine.
I'll answer that one.
The question, what do I want your kids to know from my perspective as a Black person, is that, wow, that's a great question. I think that letting your kids know from the very beginning that the world's not fair, and letting them know from the beginning the history of like, we treat all people with respect, and honestly, we give more care, not respect, but giving more care to people of color. I don't want to be, I'm no better than a white person, but I do think I deserve more care.
I do too.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I really do feel like I deserve more care in society. And so I think that is something that I would teach young kids today. Respect everyone, but have a little more care.
Absolutely.
For the marginalized people in America.
It's powerful, man. It's powerful. Let's jump to another one here. So we got from Russell. He said, you said earlier in the Zoom, the third step was for the white person to share. What are examples of that?
Yo, prime example. Ben, you work in tech. When you start a company, like, you want a co-founder, look for a co-founder of color.
That's a great point.
Not all sharing has to be like my example with Timmy of like, give me half your money. But it can be like, no, like, you know what? Like, Ben, when you partner with me and we're doing this webinar, you're giving back to community. We're partnering.
I love that. It feels great.
Right. And I think that is something that like we can do on every level, right? It's just like, hey, how can we partner? How can we work together? How can I work with a person of color? It doesn't have to be monetary. It can just be when you go to start a new venture, something simple as that. And honestly, it's in every facet of life. Thinking about how you can incorporate people of color in the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, man. Marissa, yes, we're recording and this will be shared on YouTube. So everyone who's here will get a video. Thank you for joining. All right. And we got from Rob Gallos. Love how you break it down, Corey. Anything else you guys didn't talk about to call out? Some things you said, I never thought of that way. So I guess from a white perspective, a lot of the things that you mentioned that it's like, whoa, I never thought of that perspective. Do you have any other insights like that off the top of your head? Or?
Yeah, I mean, look, honestly, it's again acknowledging that. I think the hardest thing is acknowledgement. I think that people who have gone through society unappreciated treat people like you treat your husband or your wife. Acknowledge them. Like, right. When someone does a good job, like, you say good job. When you've done something hurtful to your partner, you say, I'm sorry. Like, it really boils down to, like, sometimes I call it sandbox politics. Like, life is really about that sandbox childhood
How we're all just getting along with each other.
Yeah, like, you know, I'm telling a Black person, I'm so sorry you've had to go through that. Like, that sucks. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
so many times we don't even get the acknowledgement. You know, I broke down crying, man, when that cop from Minnesota, he was on CNN. He's on CNN, and he's like talking about the death of George Floyd. And he was on television, and I guess the Floyd family was having an interaction with him where they were talking through like the newscaster's ear, and they were talking through to the cop. Like, it was kind of an interesting interaction. It was like real-time TV.
Right.
And the cop takes his hat off. He just acknowledges that, like, I want to pay my respects to the family and acknowledge that this was wrong. This was murder. You know, so many times, almost every time, you never hear, in Eric Garner's case or Trayvon Martin's case, you never hear somebody say, this was murder.
Right. Straight up murder.
Straight up murder. And acknowledgement. Just acknowledge that these things exist. Acknowledge that the political system is fucked up, and the healthcare system is fucked up, and the corporate work system is fucked up. And once you can acknowledge these things, we can move forward.
Exactly. Acknowledge them, or talking about them, or being open. That it's not like this little secret, like everything's all perfect in this world. We actually understand there's shit that really needs a huge change, positive direction.
Yeah, and dude, white people are good people, man. You know what I'm saying?
Some of them are pieces of shit.
Yeah, but I mean, there's pieces of shit of all different races.
Yeah, that's true.
And you know, I know a lot of beautiful white people. Like, I honestly feel like I was raised by white people. I have like white family, truly. But sometimes, like, I don't want anyone to feel like shit, like I'm a shitty person because I'm white. That's not what I want anyone to walk away with. I want people to understand that you're white, but you just lived in a different world. You just lived in a different world. And you're just being exposed to another world that you didn't know existed. And so you're not a bad person. It's not your fault. You were born into this the way I was born into this. But you know, it's hard. It's hard to tell somebody, like, honestly, y'all, the way you think is racist, when they've never seen the world and had a hateful, hurtful bone in their body. But there's racism and ignorance.
Yeah, exactly. You know, even if it's not blatant racism, if you don't know you're doing it, people need to be okay to call them out and educate them.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I just want people to walk away from this conversation knowing that, like, white people are good people. It's just time to acknowledge what's going on.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Well, one more question here, which I think is a really good one that I'm actually curious. And Russ asked, what's your reasoning for using person of color versus black? So I guess as far as you're referencing, you know, black community.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, I like that one.
Who asked that question?
That was Russ Terry, but he was a panelist at our last meetup, and he's a really, really awesome guy. So thanks,
Russell, that's a great question. So, because a lot of people ask me, because I do use this term in a flexible way, but black is made up, right? Like, what is black and what is white?
Right.
So, black, to me, from my personal taste, is a descendant of slavery. That's black to me. So, for example, I don't think of Barack Obama as the first black president. I think of Barack Obama as the first African-American president because his dad is from Africa and his mother is from America. And so he is African-American.
True.
But the reason why I'm very cautious of that term black is because Barack Obama's struggle, Barack Obama's culture wasn't ripped away from him. Barack Obama's pride wasn't ripped away from him. He was able to come to America with a sense of pride, a sense of belonging to his homeland where he's from, where his father was from. That myself, I don't have. And so being Black in America truly is a part of that 400 years of systematic oppression. And so people of color allows people like Barack Obama to come into the conversation. Because at the end of the day, he's still having a Black experience in America, right? Like he's still going to be pulled over by a cop for driving in a nice car in a nice neighborhood. And so I don't want to discredit that Black experience, but when I speak of Black, I mean a descendant of slavery.
Right. And do you think, as far as, how, white people like me, how we reference Black people or people of color, is there a right time to say people of color?
And also, what is white? Right? I think I don't even like saying like, oh, the girl I'm dating's white. Why can't she be of German descent?
Yeah, exactly. It's not, the world isn't just black and white.
Dude, let me tell you, man. Like, my ex-girl's from Minnesota. She was Norwegian. And her whole energy was totally different than if I was dating a girl down south.
Yeah.
White. Like, because Norwegians have their own culture. Right? So, like, again, the terms like black and white are just, there's black. The reason why black exists is because we don't know where we come from. And so lump it all in.
Yeah, that's such a generalization.
It's just a generalization, and it's just a way to lump like a group of people together because you don't want to take the time to know that someone's Caribbean.
Yeah, exactly. And they actually, at the end of the day, don't really have anything in common, but you're like, oh yeah, those are all just black people.
Black people. And it's like, dog, if someone grew up in a Jamaican household, they grew up nothing like I grew up. Nothing. The only thing that's the same about us is that our skin color could be the same.
Right.
They could be a darker version of me, they could be a lighter version of me. But we get lumped into the same thing. And so there's a lot of nuance there.
Right. But, so I think that's something good that people should just think about, rather than just saying, black people, really just try to understand where people come from and the experiences they've had, rather than just generalizing it because that's easy.
Because when you call up the police, you say black man, that means every when you say person of color, that's something different.
Right.
He was a person of color. What does that mean? Yeah. Like brown.
And like we discussed earlier, people should be using that as a very, very last resort because, it's a life or death situation you're putting them in. And it's not the same experience whether you're calling the cops on a person of color or a white person. Totally.
100%.
Well, thank you so much, Corey, for answering all those questions. That's awesome. I just want to – all right. So, yeah, basically I wrapped up all the questions we had and everything. I want to just give you the floor, just kind of any final words you have for, I see people got a lot out of this. So I just want to acknowledge you for putting that Facebook post up because that's what, inspired me to reach out to you, and that's why we're talking now. So I wanted to say I admire that, and I admire your willingness to talk to people and educate them. So thank you very much for being here, bro. I appreciate it. Just want to wrap this up with you saying any final words that you have, and also let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, I mean, first, I want to say thank you for everybody who, tuned in to this conversation. It really, really, truly means a lot to have folks truly want to learn and truly want to be better. Because I want to be better. I want the world to be better. I want the world to be better for my kids when I have them. And, we got to be the change that we want, right? Like, America's in a lot of debt. I'll say this last point. I'll say this point often. If you've ever gotten into debt, it's really easy to get into debt. You go buy some Jordans, you go to the club, buy some bottles, you go buy some fly clothes. You just rack it up, and you're having so much fun.
Easy.
But if you've ever had to get out of debt, it's super hard to get out of, and it takes double the length of time on interest to get out of it, to break even. And so when America was founded, America was just racking up debt and having a good time. Slavery was fun. A lot of people got rich off the free labor. Taking the Native Americans' land was fun. Gold, glory, and God. Getting rich was fun. People were just getting rich and having a good time. But the day of reckoning has come where you got to pay that money back. And America has a lot of debt to owe to the people who built it, the Black people who built it, the Native American people that you stole and killed.
Right.
And that these are the privileges that you are enjoying today. You're having white America, you're having a good life and a good time on the pain, the enslavement, the robbing, the killing of people who lived 400 years ago. And so when you walk around today, sit with that. Don't feel bad about it. Act on it. Pay that debt back. Buy that Benz from that Black man. Give that woman of color, that Black woman, an opportunity. You know, get that Black real estate agent. You know, pay that debt back. And have fun doing it.
Enjoy the ride, right?
Don't be sad about it either. Like, have fun. Enjoy having Black people around you. Enjoy having diversity around you, because I'm telling you, it makes your world a better place. Enjoy it. Don't be sad about it. And so I want to leave y'all with that.
That's insanely powerful and epic, man. But lastly, just tell people where they can find you if they want to catch up or learn more.
Yo, hit me up, man, on Instagram, Corey Cambridge. Check out my podcast, Corey Cambridge. You can find my podcast on Apple and Spotify. If you just type in my name, Corey Cambridge, both my shows pop up. I'll
share this with everyone who's attending. I'll share those links too.
Yeah, thank y'all so much for everything. I really appreciate y'all.
Thank you so much for that insight, man. Appreciate you. Have a great night.
No doubt, man. Love you, brother.
Peace. Love you. Peace.